All right. We're going to start by sitting up to chant Om and then the invocation in call and response. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, great. So I'm going to show one way of sitting. I showed a way with a couple of blocks lined up against the wall. That's good. That's in the very first session. If you're not sure, you could go over that. The other thing with that is you could actually sit in a door frame. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the first session, so I wanted to just repeat that. You could sit in the door frame, which is basically going to emulate kind of spine-wise a few of these blocks lined up on the floor. So you'd have to sit on the door frame where the door isn't, essentially. So I've got a couple blankets, and I'm just going to take a foam block. If you have a wooden block, it will work as well. Foam is better because it won't be as heavy and it won't slide. So just the width of the one block away from the wall. And I'm actually going to put that into my dorsal spine. I'm using a pink block, so hopefully you can see it okay. In the medium height. So I've got the narrow end of the block against the wall. And then just to go over one more time that action with the strap, because this is good for bringing the femur bones into the hips. So it requires a long belt or two belts put together. So I just make with this one long belt, I make one big loop and I place one of the loops just over the tip of my knee, then around the back to my sacrum, and then under the knee, and then I just pull it so that it's tight. And what this will do is it actually helps with breath retention because of the way that it takes the stress out of the holding the femur bones in, and it creates space in the pelvic region. So I'm just going to go ahead and tighten that up a little bit for myself here, and then place the block in position. Now, these are just all optional things that you may or may not want to play with. If you have a preferred way of sitting and you're comfortable with that, then that's totally fine. If you sit in Padmasana, lotus pose, or Virasana, hero's pose, you can do that as well. Any of those are good options. I'm just showing a few different ways. Now, when you sit in simple cross legs, what you want to see is you have enough height underneath your seat that your knees are ideally a little bit lower than your groins. If they're higher than the groins, you'll need to put more height underneath your seat so the knees will drop down, because we're not really going for like working out in the asana. We're going more for refining and creating an environment where the breath can move freely. So I'll just let you get settled there, and you can just close your eyes. I've just got my hands, just a little bit of light pressure onto the thighs, pressing down, head in line with the shoulders, shoulders in line with hips, and just take a few deep inhalations and exhalations, and just prepare and allow yourself to go inside. And then even moving your hands back in whatever pose you're in, just so that you can take your upper arms further behind your trunk to help you open up the chest even more. So if you're using the block and the wooden block is there, you might find it slips a little. You might want to just start by sitting this way and then move the block eventually. But if you're able to sit, you'll see that what it does is it moves the back of your sternum bones forward and helps to lift the chest up. It should also keep the front ribs soft and quiet. And let's join the palms together, thumb towards the sternum bone, and then close your eyes and go inside. Make your eyes quiet, ears quiet, throat quiet. Keep the breath soft. Go from the external towards the internal. And in this moment of pratyahara, where you draw your senses of perception inwards towards yourself, allow the brain cells to settle and take a few deep and purposeful breaths, just releasing any activities you were engaged in. so that the mind can become quiet. So pranayama ideally is done either in the evening or in the morning, where the mind starts to become quiet. Either it's quiet because we're just waking up, or it's becoming quiet because it's the end of the day's activities and we're starting to slow down. If we were trying to practice pranayama midday, it's more challenging. There's more distractions. The brain is more active at that time. The digestive system as well is more active at that time. So you might observe that if you try to practice at various times of the day. So we'll chant Om together 3 times and then the invocation in call and response. Take a deep exhalation, slowly inhale and start. Om. Please repeat after me. Yogena chittasya padena vacham. Yogena chittasya padena vacham. Malam sharirasya chavachakena. Malam sharirasya chavachakena. Yopa garotam pravaram muninam. Yopa garotam pravaram muninam. Patanjalim pranjariran natosmi. Patanjalim pranjariran natosmi. Abahu prushakaram. Abahu prushakaram. Shankachakra sitarinam. Shankachakra sitarinam. Sahasra shirasam shvetam. Sahasra shirasam shvetam. Pranamami Patanjalim. Pranamami Patanjalim. Hare Om. Hare Om. Lift your chest, bow your head. Surrender your head to your heart and salute the light within. The practice of pranayama actually helps us to observe that light within. Then slowly lower your hands, raise your head, and slowly open your eyes. And then just take one hand behind you if you've got the block there. Remove the block. And we'll get set up to lie down in Shavasana over the 3 folded blankets. So the more narrow fold. And again, you have the option, if you prefer, to have more dense and broad support under your spine, to take a bolster. So, and if props, you know, if you don't have as many blankets, just simplify it and settle over a bolster. So 3 folded blankets, we'll need 2 of these. And they'll be in a stepped position. We'll need 3 blankets in total. How about that? That'll make things easier. So 3 blankets in total. I have one in a stair step fashion. So one is higher than the other. And then I take my 3rd blanket as a pillow, whatever height of pillow, so that your face is parallel to the floor that you need. Your sacrum is going to go against the 1st blanket, and your bottom of your rib cage is going to go along this 2nd blanket. Buttocks is on the floor. You're welcome to take a bolster under your knees. If your lower back is bothering you, you can turn your light down or off, cover your eyes, cover yourself if you're cool. If you cover your eyes, just make sure there's no pressure on the eyes themselves. So then let your arms go, let your legs go. Don't take the limbs too wide. Keep them fairly close in, unless you're extremely hot, which unfortunately we're probably not at this stage of the end of winter, early spring. And just allow yourself to really settle. Just take your time. Don't be in a hurry. Here we have the sound of not so much a gentle rain, it's kind of a heavy rain dropping, falling, but in a way that's kind of like the sound of the brain cells releasing down. The rain, makes a louder sound than, say, the falling of the snow. In pranayama, we would be going more for that sound of the falling snow, that silence that comes with that kind of heavier snowfall. So don't be in a hurry and don't go for deep breathing all of a sudden. You'll find that the breath will be different each time you come to the mat to practice pranayama. Start with the abdominal area and let your abdominal region, your hip flexors relax. See that the back is released sufficiently. If not, you can bend your legs and release the back, create space and traction. The skin of the buttocks, tailbone should be moving down towards the heels. Relax in such a way that you're not falling or dropping or getting heavy. Draw the vertebra of the spine into the body. And when we take the time to set ourselves up properly in Shavasana, we have attention, attention to detail, how we set up ourselves. Are we in the center of ourselves? Intention, which in Sanskrit is sankalpa. And then with that comes precision and alignment. And, precision and alignment can have rigidity, like a connotation of rigidity connected to it. But the precision and alignment that we're going for in this practice really is more of a maturity. It's like knowing what you need and not being drawn into something one way or the other based on the ego or the vrittis and the mind stuff, the fluctuations. So release the limbs, release the arms, the legs consciously from the front to the back. Release the frontal thighs to the back thighs, to the calves. Let them be settled, steady, and working towards becoming deeply still. So, as I was saying earlier, the quietness inside is that kind of quietness that comes after a heavy snowfall. Let the tongue relax down in a soft palate of the lower jaw, at the edges, underneath, the top, the origin of the tongue so that the throat relaxes as well. The tongue can be quite an active muscle. And so it's important to just check in with that area once in a while to see what's going on there. If any saliva gathers in the mouth, just swallow at the very end of the exhalation. Relax your breath. Let it be easy, simple, quiet, soft, tender. Just watch where it goes. Just observe the breath, not with the thinking mind, with the feeling and emotion. You may feel the breath is a little bit more prominent in the abdominal area. Let that just have a natural feeling to it. And then eventually in this Shavasana, we'll cross the bridge from being in the state of Shavasana towards the practice of pranayama, where we, as BKS Iyengar would say, start to manipulate the prana. The prana is not just the breath, it's all the forms of energy that move throughout our bodies and also around us. Working towards now Ujjayi 2, which is learning to prolong the exhalation. Taking your time here again with that feeling, emotional, observational aspect of going for a longer, deeper, more refined exhalation. Gently release the upper abdomen backwards towards the spine on the exhalation. After a few successive breaths observing this, the exhalation will lengthen. It will be more gradual and progressive towards this elongation. And then again, coming naturally without force, observe the pause after the exhalation and also the inhalation. Pausing after the exhalation, after a few successive breaths, will relax your abdomen, and you'll notice that your navel will start to relax backwards as the exhalation becomes more and more elongated. This is not a muscular action, it's a respiratory action. Try to stay with this. Longer, deeper, more refined exhalation. Observing the pause at the end of the exhalation. But if your attention wanders, just gently bring it back. Perhaps you'll notice as well at the point of the pause at the very end of the exhalation, the sternum bone, the breastbone will dip a little as well. And this helps to open up the floating ribs. And then when you inhale, inhale up and along the sides of the body to keep the center of your spine, the Sushumna Nadi, central nervous system, quiet. Direct the inhalations to run up the sides of the chest, like the sides of the banks of the river. And observe that as you take these inhalations along the sides of your trunk, your torso, each of the ribs will move a little bit outwards and upwards towards the top chest and shoulder blade area. But again, don't be in a hurry, take your time. Let the breath come into these patterns naturally. The breath is one of the most used aspects of our nature. That means it's mercurial, it's changeable. We can change it. It's not easy, but it's quick to change. So have the intention to work with the breath, but not with the willpower to get to the breath. So here the tapas, the discipline, the practice, the work is not that strong, sweaty, heating willpower that we experience sometimes in asana, but it's a release inwardly, it's sublimated, it's done with intention. On the inhalation, observe that the skin at the sides of your nose, so the outer skin, as you inhale, releases down towards the tip of the nose. See that the nostrils don't flare or puff out, that they remain calm. Creating a sense of calm and quiet helps us to absorb the prana, the energy of the breath. Iyengar said the prana of the rock is the spark. You know, when you want to light a fire, you rub two rocks together. So the spark that would come from that action is the prana. And it's one thing to create the prana, but it's a whole other thing to have an environment in which that prana can be properly absorbed deep within the deepest layer of the nervous system, so that the practice works on the circulatory, respiratory, and nervous system. So the potential to absorb the prana presents itself when we allow the breath to slow down. And Gita Iyengar said that awareness in asana reveals the prana. So when we practice asana, we can feel the prana in a different way. So the prana is revealed to us. That the practice of pranayama helps us to absorb the energy that is generated by the asana practice. And that asana is practiced with awareness generates prana. And we need to practice pranayama to help us absorb that energy. Keep the tongue steady, the mind steady. slowly bring your breath and awareness up to the surface, returning to normal breathing. You may notice that your limbs feel heavy, and that's actually a good sign because the limbs by their nature are mobile. So we want to release them from that mobility, that rajasic energy. And take your time and slowly start to come up into a seated position. So now you're going to set up for seated pranayama. I'm just going to turn the lights on here. You can add all those things we had in the beginning. The belt, if you found that helpful, the block, if you found that helpful. You can just sit in simple cross legs. You're going to spend just a little bit of time on Jalandhara Bandha. So instead of dropping the chin, first lift the chest. And I'm taking my hands behind me to get the chest to lift and then take the chin down. And then just keep the head quiet. And so then eventually you'll take your hands on your thighs, palms down or palms up is fine. And sometimes, you know, my limbs are a little bit shorter. So I like to take another blanket to help me create this L-shaped position with my hands, with my arms rather. If your limbs are longer, you might not need it. So again, you want to have whatever height to let the knees drop. You can sit, if you can sit in Padmasana, Virasana, Swastikasana, whatever works for you. And you'll start by coming into this simple position with Jalandhara Bandha. And then just before I turn the lights down lower again, we are going to go from Antara Kumbhaka, which means we'll be working up to more of a hold on the inhalation. So take a long, deep inhalation. And it's more than a pause, but it's not a gripping. So a Kumbhaka is like a seal or a holding. So you'll take a long, deep inhalation, hold, and then a long exhalation, then some recovery breath. And then maybe depending on your capacity, you'll work up to maybe 3 holds, then some recovery breath. Then from there, we're going to transition. We did last week digital pranayama or alternative nostril breathing with the hand position. So we're going to work up to that here as well. Pratiloma and then Analoma, and I'll walk you through that once we get going. I'm just giving you some of the details before you settle so that I don't have to do this when you're in the pose. So if you're a seasoned practitioner and you've done this a lot, if you practice pranayama regularly, then you can pick one hand. But if you're learning and it's newer and you don't practice as often, the idea is that you would use one hand and then the other hand, and I'll walk you through that. So you can either stay and the hand stays on the nose for all the cycles of the breath, or you do one variation, remove the hand, other variation, remove the hand. So I'm not moving my head, my trunk, or it's just the arm is moving. And the moving of the hand when you're learning it helps with the rhythm. So I'll leave that up to you, and you can practice and see, you can try both and see what works for you. But if you're newer to practicing alternative nostril breathing, it's better to change the hand position because it will keep the posture more upright as well. Okay, so we're going to get started now. Just take that Jalandhara Bandha action. Don't be in a hurry to go for deep breaths just yet. Let yourself settle. Lift from the bottom of the sternum bone and then release the chin down. Take your hands beside your hips for a few moments. Press down and really lift up the side walls of the chest so that you get that feeling of being able to breathe up the sides of the chest, like each rib one at a time, and then take the head down. So before you move your hands, just observe the tendency is that when we inhale, the head will want to lift up. And then when we exhale, the chest will want to drop. But when you use your hands in this fashion and you take a few deep inhalations and exhalations, the chest will stay lifted on the exhale and the head will stay down on the inhale. So when you feel like you have that concept, then you can just take your hands onto your thighs, palms down, a little bit more grounding, palms up, whatever feels better for you is fine. And then just observe your breath now in this seated position. Don't be in a hurry to go for a long, deep breath right away. I find sometimes as a teacher, it's hard to know how to teach, what to teach when during pranayama, because once you get into that quiet state, I don't like to give a lot of instruction, but we're here to learn. And as I said before, if you were to pick up Light on Pranayama, which is an excellent resource that I use a lot, parts of it can sound very technical because there's a different kind of language that comes with the practice of pranayama. It's different than asana. So observe the breath in this seated position with your hands on your thighs. And then when it feels natural, come to a very long, deep inhalation. And then go beyond just the pause at the very top of the inhale. Slow, cool, quiet, deep inhalation and pause. And then slow, cool, quiet, deep exhalation. You may find in a seated position, it takes you a little bit longer to exhale. And that maybe the inhalation doesn't feel as deep because now, gravity has changed. So take a few recovery breaths. Keep the mind calm, steady, still. The steadier the breath, the more refined the breath. Keep the skin on the face, forehead, temple region quiet. And then at your own capacity, your own pace, go for a long, deep inhalation. And then that Antara Kumbhaka after the inhale, where you are holding the breath. And then taking a long, deep exhalation and some recovery breath. So maybe at your own capacity, you can take a few of these cycles in succession, where you inhale, pause, Antara Kumbhaka, then exhale, Inhale, another Antara Kumbhaka. But I'll leave that up to you. It's like coming out of an asana. You want to have enough gas left in your tank, as I say, to come out of the pose smoothly and with that precision and alignment that we look for inside the asana. So similarly with the breath, if we go beyond our capacity, there'll be a jerkiness when we transition. And then obviously that will have an effect on the nervous system. So don't overdo. Really observe any tension that comes up. Even though we're coming towards this Antara Kumbhaka where we're holding after the inhalation, really observe the exhalation that follows. That is the opportunity to absorb the prana of that inhalation. It's in the exhalation. And you'll notice that when you come to the very bottom of the exhalation, there's a natural pause there as well. Now, coming into a few more cycles of this Antara Kumbhaka, when you come into that hold after the inhalation, can you lift the breastbone upwards even more? With that idea of creating more space for you to absorb the prana. A few signs that things are going well for you in this cycle of breathing is that the feeling of that Jalandhara Bandha improves so that you're not necessarily physically working to keep that chin lock position. And that it feels as though the width across the base of the skull increases and becomes more soft. And that the spine remains upright on the exhalation. So we're just watching for these signs. So this precision comes from the inside out. The alignment leads to precision, which leads to a divine state of extension and expansion, attention, concentration, dharana, and consciousness. So similar to how we practice asana, with back care or something, we want to create space for the spine, the vertebra. similarly, we want this expansion and extension in the body for the breath to move. And then, without being in a rush, just finish off where you are in that cycle of breathing. And when you finish that off, you come back to some recovery breaths, normal breaths. Keep your eyes closed and just lift your head up. Just observe with your eyes closed. When you've come to these easy breaths, then you may want to change your leg position. So if you're in a simple cross legs, if you're fine and you don't need to, you don't need to. But just if you need to give your legs a break, if you're in Padmasana and you want to go to the other side, if you're in Virasana, you want to release and take another pose, that's fine. And you may feel like you want to add the belt on here if your legs feel a little bit tired. We're going to go for a few more rounds of seated pranayama. You may decide you want to take a chair or sit closer to the wall. Any of those things are available. So just settle yourself and come back to that Jalandhara Bandha action and really feel the base of the pose where you can feel the pelvis and the sacrum are even and that there's no movement in the pelvis. So the pelvis stays really grounded as the element of earth. So once you get settled and you take that Jalandhara Bandha position, we're going to go for Analoma 1B, which is inhaling through both nostrils and then exhaling through alternative nostrils. But before we use the hands, let's just get the rhythm of the breath. So we can use our imagination here. So if we take this Jalandhara Bandha, and then we take a long, deep exhalation just to clear the breath in the body. And then a long, deep inhalation, inhaling through both nostrils. Then imagine you're only exhaling through the right nostril. Then take a long, deep inhalation, again through both nostrils. And then imagine you're exhaling only through the left. Let's do that one more time just to get the rhythm. Inhale through both. Exhale through the right. Inhale through both. Exhale through the left. So now if we do a dry run using both hands to start with, you'll take that digital pranayama position where index finger, middle finger into the palm of the hand, and then the thumb touches the tip of the ring finger and the little finger. And sometimes I get both hands ready to go. Sometimes I just take Jhana Mudra with the hand that I'm not using or just let it be quiet. So I'm just going to get both hands prepared. So lift the chest, drop the chin, and then inhale through both nostrils. Take your hand to your nose, plug the left, exhale through the right. Release your right hand down when you're done. Inhale through both. Take your left hand up, plug the right nostril, exhale through the left. Release the left hand down. Inhale through both nostrils. Take your right hand up, plug the left, exhale through the right. Take your right hand down, inhale through both. Left hand up, plug the right, exhale through the left. Release the left hand down, inhale through both. And then here you may want to keep one hand on the nose or continue with that alternation. Then you're going to block the left, exhale through the right. Pay attention to the side that you're blocking in a way more than the side that you're opening. See what the pressure is there. And then you release the pressure to inhale through both. Maybe the hand goes down as you inhale and you take the other hand up. Then you block the right, exhale through the left. So I'll let you carry on with that, taking your time. You can take normal breaths anytime you need to, or to address your physical posture, any changes that need to be made. So the subtle arm movements are going to help you create a rhythm, the rhythm of the breath. And in a way, this type of breathing is more subtle than the Ujjayi 2 breathing you did lying down. It takes you towards the subtle body. See that the head isn't feeling pressured or heavy. You want to observe that there isn't energy going into the head. That's why the Jalandhara Bandha position is so important. And notice that when your mind wanders, the breath goes more outside, becomes more externalized. Let's do 3 more cycles of this breathing, unless you're finish. Don't be in a hurry, just take your time for finishing so that you're even and equal on both sides. And then when you've come back to some normal breaths, regular breaths, again, just taking your time. You'll decide if you want to stay here or again, change your leg position if needed. We're just going to switch gears. Pratiloma. We inhale through alternative nostrils and we exhale through both. So it's reversing what you just did. And so if you want to just reposition yourself there, get settled. And again, that alternative arm position will work well here as well. So let's get ready. For Jalandhara, lift the chest, drop the chin, and let's just do a few with our imagination again. Take a deep exhalation, release the breath completely. And then inhale as though you're inhaling only through the right nostril. Take a deep exhalation, out both nostrils. Inhale as though you're inhaling only through the left. Exhale through both. Inhale through the right. Exhale through both. Inhale through the left. Okay, getting that rhythm then. Take a deep exhalation of both nostrils. Bring your right hand up. Inhale through the right, plug the left. Release that hand down. Exhale through both. Left hand up, plug the right, and then inhale through the left. Release the hand down. Exhale through both. Hand up, inhale through the right. Hand down, exhale through both. Left hand up, inhale through the left. Hand down, exhale through both. And then just carrying on your own capacity, either with alternative hands, again, to get that rhythm. And then feel also the nose that's being plugged rather than putting all the intention on the nostril that's being plugged rather than the nostril that's open. The little tiny pull of the skin. Sometimes when we feel like the nose is blocked a little bit, theoretically the nose should less likely be blocked in the evening, but it kind of depends on a few factors. So if you feel that there's a blockage, you can just pull slightly up on that skin, but it's very sensitive, so just not too aggressive. You still want, really ideally, the skin of the outer nose to draw down towards the tip. Observe the head as well, again, just to decrease the amount of energy that's going up into that area. And instead of letting the energy go into the head, draw the prana deeply into the body on a cellular level. Observe again when the mind wanders, the breath comes a little bit more external, will become more externalized. Taking your time here, just 3 more cycles, or finishing up where you'll be even and equal on both sides. And then when you've finished off, you'll take some normal breaths and just keep your eyes closed, and on the inhalation, raise your head up and just observe with that non-analytical part of the brain. Maintaining this quietness, and you'll set yourself up for flat shavasana. So take whatever you need. Maybe your back feels a little tweaky. You want to have a bolster underneath your thighs. Take it higher up towards the buttocks rather than just under the knees. So it will allow the hamstrings, the belly of the hamstrings, to release if you're going to do that. Or some students really like the feeling of the bolster or extra blankets on top of their thighs, like a weighted blanket. Take some support for your head and lie down with your legs bent. So don't be in a hurry to straighten the legs. Just set yourself up with the legs bent and just release, especially take a few more moments here with the bent legs to release the spine, because you sat for quite a while and it can be quite fatiguing on the spine. So with the legs bent, then coax the tailbone, the buttock, skin down towards the heels. And the way we were taught for years was to take one leg straight at a time by dragging the heel down the end of the mat. So it's like traction. But then see that when you get to the end of the mat, you don't shorten from your inner heels. See that you take a little bit of extra time there to extend the inner heels when you've brought the legs to straight. And then release completely. Allow the limbs to become heavy again and settle them down. Silent, settled, calm. Allow the skin on the temple forehead region to become quiet. And don't be in a hurry right away to go for deep breathings or to come back to any of the pranayama breathings that you were doing. Sometimes when we get into that rhythm of pranayama, we want to keep going and going and going, and that's all fine and good, but there's a time to let that go as well, so that now you can transition from the doing of the pranayama to the absorption of the pranayama. Gita would often say that she was worried students found pranayama boring, that they wouldn't pursue pranayama. And she said it's a little bit like watching grass grow. But if you don't water the grass, it won't grow. And you won't see it grow. The pranayama, the shavasana after pranayama has a different kind of feel to it. And it has this absorptive quality. And Gita would talk about just like the inner cave of existence. You know, years ago, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, there's stories of these yogis that would go and live in caves, and, you know, they would practice and come out and they would have this power of yoga. But Gita said, we all have that inner cave of our existence. And at first it may feel a little bit weird, like we're walking into a dark room and we don't know where the light switch is. And we have to, you know, pause in that stillness to find our way. And then we can see the Deepika, the light. And so it's interesting that Iyengar wrote Deepika on yoga, light on yoga, Deepika on pranayama, and Jiva Deepika, light on life. And the word guru itself means heavy and light at the same time. The guru brings light to darkness, lightness to the heaviness. And Gita said that pranayama brings the light from within. Very slowly, take your time. Coming up from this deep stillness, this absorption of the prana. Really slowly start to re-enter from your inner cave back into the external environment. And if you are at home and you want to stay in Shavasana, then feel free to do that. Otherwise, you can make your way up to a seated position. Namaste. See you next week, if not before. Take good care.